this event now, slowly, the ladies will come. If Rabbi Laniado comes, so we're gonna let him start saying the words he wants to say, the wisdom words of all of us. So בעזרת השם נעשה ונצליח.
Amen.
Nia Ozari is a doctor, is a very good doctor, and בעזרת השם, with her guidance, she's going to amuse you, tell you the wisdom words that everybody needs to hear בעזרת השם with happiness and joy. Nia?
בעזרת השם, אמן, אמן. תודה רבה, תודה רבה. Boker Tov to everybody. Do I need to hold this, or if I put it here on the table, will you kind of still hear me? Let's see what happens. This is for that or not? That's something separate. Okay. Because I need my hands. I talk with my hands. Okay. Okay, perfect. So it'll just kind of pick up and echo, and that's good. We'll see. We'll play with it. So, Bezat Hashem, first of all, Kol HaKavod Lachem. First, thank you to Hannah and her daughter. Tell me again your name. Esther, for putting all of this together, Nachon. You guys coordinate all of this and bring the women out to learn and chizuk. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. I'm sorry. The man in the parking lot said that 2 cars are parked over there. He asked me to move my car. So I moved my car, but he said he's going to get towing truck to start towing people away.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. So did everyone here, whoever is parked maybe in the lot to...
Park in the side streets.
Yeah.
It's much easier. I know it's a little bit walk.
Yeah.
That's what I did early in the morning. Later on in 1 hour, we're all going to move out.
Yeah, we don't want anybody getting towed.
It's going to be available to park right here on the sidewalk. I'm so sorry.
Okay. There was some space on Proust there was a few spaces on Proust when we were parking. Okay. Welcome. So I normally lecture in the evening. So for me, this is like, I feel like we're breathing the morning air. Everything is fresh. It's a new day. We don't know I always say as a teacher, I would always say, and principal, and someone who trained teachers, to say you never know what your students have been through before 7:30 in the morning. And it's the same for us, right? We're all here. We all are clothed, Baruch Hashem. We somehow got here, but we have no idea what each of us has been through up until this very moment. So I want to kind of like ground us and bring us together now, and everyone should take a breath. And just come present in the moment. And if you have your phone with you, put it on vibrate or silent. I totally understand if you need to have it next to you, or there's kids calling, or whatever's going on, lots of pieces in play. You do what you need to do. You get up, go, come. I don't take anything personally. So you just do you, and we'll run the shiur. So I wanted to just, good morning, welcome everyone, come in. Help yourselves, there's beautiful fruit and water. Refresh. So thank you again. I just want to say thank you for putting this together. It looks to me like you have an incredible day planned here with full of Torah and chizuk and inspiration. I wish I could stay for the whole thing. Unfortunately, I cannot, but I'll grab what I can and I'll share what I can. Just to understand that in particular, like Hannah said, this particular time of where we're holding right before Rosh Chodesh Av, it's so important for each of us in our ways that we can to bring out and forth whatever light we can. Because we're in times of pressure historically, times of stress. We see what's going on around the world. We see what's going on in Eretz HaKodesh. And we, in our own way, should just bring forth whatever we can in this time as we head into Rosh Chodesh and into the 9 days, to know that it does tend to be a more difficult time, and that, we can hold our space for ourselves and for other people to make it as light as we can. even though historically we understand it's a difficult time. So let's enter into this day and into these shiurim, understanding that not only are we holding space for ourselves and for everyone here, but when we leave here today, whenever that is that happens, that you're going to take with you what you have and you're going to bring it forth. You're going to bring it forth to your families, to your community, to your place of work, wherever you're headed. You bring yourself with you. And so we want to bring ourselves filled with light and filled with chizuk and go out there today and the rest of these 9 days and do whatever we can. And I want to encourage you in that process, and especially now. I say that that we should, I would personally like to, on my own end, and I invite all of you to do the same right now in your own minds. If you have someone or some situation that you would like to dedicate the learning for, so for me I'd like to say Leilui Nishmas, my father-in-law, Alfred Ben Nissim, and also the son of my friend who was unfortunately nifter recently, Seth Ben Jody Brian. And the Hatzlacha of Yosef Ben Yafa Shendel. If there's anyone you would like to dedicate your learning to, please do that right now. And then also, I always say, Lakim Shrinta Me'afra. We want to bring our learning to a place where we're giving chizuk and encouragement to the Shechina. I don't think we think about her enough. She's very real, and she misses us, and she misses her home, and we give her home. We give her a place, a space in our hearts, in our homes, in our shuls, in our community, when we bring awareness to her, and when we're thinking about her, and even just the thoughts to think to her, Shechina, we want you back with us. We're doing everything in our power, we want you back with us. Does this make sense? So we want to, in these 9 days, be really thinking about the Shekhinah. Rav Avigdor Miller talks about how do we go into these 9 days? How do we handle this period of time? Historically, there's nothing we can do about the past. We can only be in the present, and we can work for the future. And obviously, all of our grand goal is to bring Mashiach and bring Beis HaMikdash back. So they all have our home. We all are reuniting again together. We're all going back to Eretz HaKodesh and doing whatever the avoda is that we can do for Hashem. In the meantime, we do what we can do. Right? But one of the things that Rav Avigdor Miller says is, especially in these 9 days, if you even so much as think about the Shekhinah, it's a huge mitzvah. If you go home and at night before you go to bed, literally 60 seconds, sit down on the floor and say, Shekhinah, I am with you. I'm with you, I'm sitting with you, I'm mourning with you, I feel your loss, I feel your longing. He said this is a massive mitzvah. We don't think that what we do matters. I talked about this a little bit last night. Every single effort that we do, whether it's mentally or physically, and certainly spiritually, moves mountains in Shamayim. And everything is noticed, and everything is accounted for, and everything goes into our bank accounts up there. So every single thing that we do over the course of these next 9 days, try as much as you can, mentally, otherwise, to incorporate thoughts of the Shekhinah, and that will uplift you and certainly give her chizuk where she's holding right now in today's world. Welcome, please come in, have a seat, make yourselves at home. So, for the first shiur of the day to kick off, I am speaking to you today about something that could be spoken about probably months on end by people much greater than myself. There are books that are written about it at length. It's spoken about throughout the Gemara, throughout the Tanakh. The Nevi'im talk about it. It's really a defining subject for Jews in particular, but for the entire human race. And that is the power of speech. So our topic for today is about the power of speech. Now, I tend to get a bit long-winded, and I know that there are other people than me speaking today. So I would really appreciate you helping me keep track of the time. And, when I have like 15 minutes left, be flashing at me hands and fingers and tell me, I just keep going. You can't stop me once I get on a roll. So, but I'll try to be as mindful as I can about the time. But the power of speech and the concept of speech, this topic is something that there's endless things to discuss about it. But before I go off on my tangents and listen to my voice too much because I don't like hearing myself, I want to put it out to you first. I would like to know if anyone is willing to engage and volunteer. When I talk to you about the power of speech, what are the first things that come to your mind? What do you think about when you hear about the concept of speech and the power of speech? Yes. We'll all share.
Like creating realities
creating realities. Okay, amazing.
Yeah, and it said Hashem spoke and everything got created.
Exactly. Hashem literally created the world through the power of his speech, right? Through the letters and the power of his speech. What else? Yes.
Positive speech.
Tell me more about that.
What I've learned and heard that when you say something negative, you can't take it back.
When you say something positive, you also can't take it back,
That's true.
right?
But there was a father and a son, and he was explaining to the son that every time you say something bad, there's like a nail goes in, and then kind of you can't take it back.
Oh,
So to speak like
that's a good imagery.
Yeah, I saw that, and to speak positive and lots of blessings and to say positive things, because if you're already using your mouth to speak, you want to speak and you're praying, and so the same mouth that's praying should be
Excellent.
saying positive things, not negative and curses.
Yes, yes. A peh kadosh, a holy mouth, a holy vessel. Exactly. Excellent. Thank you. You wanted to
I
add?
was just going to say guarding your tongue.
Guarding your tongue. Exactly. Okay, fantastic. What else? Anybody over here in this pocket of the room? Any ideas?
Self-control.
Okay, tell me more about what that means. She said self-control.
You have to think what you say.
Yes, exactly. You need to put space between the thought and the words, right? So have some kind of restriction and self-control so that you're filtering what's actually falling out of the mouth, right? Okay, excellent. So everyone has some good ideas about what speech is, right? So if I say to you the words abracadabra, what do you think about?
Magician.
Magic, right? Every magician, they have their hat, they take the wand, abracadabra, poof, the bunny jumps out of the hat, right? But have you ever actually thought about those words? Abra-kedabra. These are Aramaic words, right? Abra, I create, kedabra, as I speak.
I never thought about that. Wow, that's interesting.
It's heavy hitting. It's so simple, and we don't. I create as I speak. We understand that Hashem created us in His image, right? He created us to emulate Him, to copy Him, to be able to bring His goodness into the world the way that He brings His goodness into the world. That's how we create Dvekus Hashem, is by emulating Him, becoming like Him, being as much like Him as possible. So what did He do? What gift did He give us, among millions of gifts that He gave us, is the gift of speech. He creates, and specifically created His entire Bria, with His speech, whatever it is we understand of that, and we create as we speak. So we are essentially the co-creators with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and part of the ways in which we co-create is through our speech, through the power of speech. So every time you have a hard time to have that filter, that space between the thought and the expression of speech, you have to think to yourself, wait a minute, abracadabra, what am I creating magically here? Am I creating positive angels? They're going to go with me throughout the day and bless me and bless other people and everyone I come in contact with? Or chas v'chalila, am I creating the opposite? Am I creating chas v'shalom, negative angels? They're going to go with me and impact the people around me. We don't see them, but from the texts we understand that's really what's happening. When we take an action or when we have a speech, we are creating essentially angels that come with us wherever we go. And the nature of those angels is going to be the nature of the energy that we permeate out into the world. They're also going to be angels that are up in Shamayim, speaking on our behalf or against us, chas v'shalom. And they're going to be the little angels that are whispering in our ears about actions to take and ways to think and things to do. So speech is integrated on every level It's all the way from the highest levels spiritually, next to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, down to our lowest levels in the Malchus, in the physical world, and everything in between. So I'd like to just read for you a little bit. So just before I get ahead of myself, I always try to do a lot of research. Welcome, make yourself at home. Please come in, don't be shy, pick a seat, whatever's comfortable for you. Bring the baby, come in. I'm going to just lay out for you all the sources that I referenced in my research. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to quote from every one of them, but just so you know where I'm pulling from, if you ever like to go back and do your own kind of homework. So for this lecture, I resourced Pirkei Avos, the Ben Ish Chai, the Rambam, the Chafetz Chaim. I also have here Orchos Yosher from Rav Kanievsky Zatzal, and Walking with Our Fathers from Rabbi Elchanan Jacobitz. So I have a whole bunch of sources here, but of course, the absolute authority on Lashon is Chafetz Chaim. So I have a few books from the Chafetz Chaim, and I just, when I was studying, I said, Dana, I can't say it better than him. So I would like to just read for you a couple of different, sections from, this is the Chafetz Chaim, A Lesson a Day. It's a 2-book series. I just have the first one. But this is talking about an overview of Lashon, an overview of speech, and the whole concepts behind it. When we examine the workings of our words, we come to see that they, more than any other human capacity, define us. What we say and how we say it is literally who we are. Angry, hurtful words define an angry, hurtful person, and kind, considerate words define a kind and considerate person. So the Chafetz Chaim, not me, the Chafetz Chaim is going so far as to say you literally are what you speak.
Can you repeat the last?
Yes. And angry, hurtful words define an angry, hurtful person. Kind, considerate words define a kind and considerate person. I think we've all been at one point or the other on the receiving end of speech, right? And we know what it feels like to be spoken to when someone is speaking with authenticity and love and care and kindness. And we know what it is to be spoken to by someone who is angry and resentful and irritable and just generally grumpy, right? Or chas v'shalom, malicious even, right? So we know what that feels like. We know what it is to be on the receiving end. We probably also know what it is to be on the giving end of both of those things. I don't think anyone would argue that it feels better to be giving out speech that is kind, considerate, thoughtful, and to be receiving someone else's speech that is kind and considerate, thoughtful, versus the other. Nobody wants to be around or a part of the other. It leaves us sick. It leaves us weak. It leaves us debilitated. Not that I'm going to get into parenting, but I used to teach and lecture about parenting all the time, just to plant the seed of thought. So you can imagine how a parent speaks with a child that is still in its development, how that impacts them. Kind speech versus not kind speech. You can do it versus you're worthless. You're useless, God forbid. Our speech literally builds or destroys. Our speech builds people or breaks people. Which is why the Chafetz Chaim goes on to say that our mouths are one of the most powerful weapons that exists on the planet. There was one thing about that. Hold on, let me see if I can find. Well, let me just finish this because it's so good. This can be seen by considering the unique nature of the tongue. It is partly hidden and partly revealed. It is usually not seen, but it is heard. Maharal conclude that Hashem designed the tongue to reflect its function, which is to reveal the hidden self, one's thoughts, ideas, and personality. The tongue takes these hidden elements from within the person and through words brings them out into the open. if you think about it, without the tongue, without the lashon, without the equipment that is the mouth, there's really very little way for someone to truly know who you are. Because how do you reveal yourself? Generally through speech and action. But let's just take that for a second. We do reveal ourselves through speech and through action. How many of you have ever experienced when someone says one thing and does something contrary? Right? So we understand that those combinations of things, if they're incongruent, also causes a sense of confusion, misunderstanding. I hear what you're saying, but the way that you're behaving doesn't match what you're saying. Right? So that's how speech and action tie in together. But we understand that the tongue, the mouth, the lashon, this power of speech is the primary way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gifted us to be able to express ourselves and show who we are in the world. And by nature of us being His servants, right, He put us here to serve Him, is a goy kadosh, mamlechet am kadosh, right? We are a holy nation. Mamlechet kohanim vegoy kadosh. Is that the thing? So we're a holy nation, and we're meant to serve Him. And so we have to understand by default, we're given the gift of speech in order to serve Him. So we're meant to emulate kindness, love, compassion, rachamim. Is there anything in the entire universe that has more compassion and rachamim than HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How many times He can forgive us? It's not something we humans can comprehend, the level and the extent to which He loves us and forgives us for everything we do, all the time, every single day, and especially around Rosh Hashanah. Right? So what an incredible subject to help you start preparing for Rosh Hashanah. What an incredible undertaking for us to begin to think about our lashon, about our speech, about what we're producing, about what we're creating. As we're approaching Rosh Hashanah, every single word we've ever uttered in the past year is going to go through a review. How do you feel about that? Right? Pachad. Pachad. Who can even remember what we said? HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, right? I don't remember what I said yesterday, but He knows. And it's gonna prance, all my words are gonna prance, all of our words are gonna prance in front of the Beis Din Shel Ma'ala, right? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is gonna say, I like that, didn't like that, no, not that, right? Better we start to do that work now, Rosh Chodesh Av. Forget about starting in Elul. We're the hardcore. We start now in Av. Okay, we're the Navy SEALs. We start now preparing, and we start to really start reviewing, because that's the one thing that's remarkable about tshuva, is that when we make tshuva on something, really tshuva amitit, real tshuva, meaning we rip it from our being. Our old habits, the bad habits, the things that don't serve us and don't serve the people around us and don't serve Hashem. We become aware of it, we take it from our being, we rip it and we get rid of it and we say, enough, that's it, die, adkan, I'm done. I'm done with that behavior, and you change. You are literally, it's like having a whiteboard. You're erasing everything you did before. You're saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm sincere with my intention. I'm going to make tshuva on this. I'm going to start watching my speech. I'm going to start watching what I say, how I say, what's the intention behind the words that come out of my mouth. I'm going to create a greater space between the thought and the action of speech. And you begin to practice it and flex the muscle and practice more, so that by the time Rosh Hashanah rolls around, you'll be able to sit there in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in front of the Aron HaKodesh, and say, look, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look at me. Look, I'm your daughter. Look what I took upon myself. Look what I've done. I really worked hard. Please, tislach li. For anything I ever said that hurt someone, tislach li. Why do you think we have to go and ask for forgiveness to people before Rosh Hashanah? It's not that we walked up to someone, chas v'shalom, God forbid, physically assaulted them. No, it's most likely 99% because we said something. No? We said something. We said hurtful words. We had uncaring action, inconsideration, and it all manifested itself through some comment. 2 words even. Right? And for this, we have to stand and beg and grovel and say, please forgive me. So if we start now, the review of our habits. And that's one of the things that the Ben Ish Chai talks about. If you have never read this, the Ben Ish Chai's Laws for Women. I forget what it's called in Hebrew. Chukat Nashim? I don't know. What is it? But in English it's called Laws for Women, the book's Ben Ish Chai. He talks about watching one's words. Chapter 25. And in here, what he speaks about, first of all, he says women have a tendency to speak too much. We're chatterboxes, right? We like to talk. Right? Now, I have to tell you, I've heard that my whole life. Women like to talk. But if you've ever been in the women's section after Minyan in the men's shul, I'm sorry, they also have their own version of a hen house. I disagree that women talk. I see the men, they're chitter-chatter, they know everybody's business. So I don't know. I think men also talk, but we just kind of get the rap for that. But it's okay. It's okay. We get the name for that. Yeah, I don't know, maybe because they think we have...
Compassion and chesed, we speak a lot of good.
We do, 100%, exactly. So what the Ben Ish Chai targets here in this chapter is he's talking about the fact that, women like to talk. Okay, fine. But the idea that speech becomes habit. How we speak becomes habit. And so we have to be mindful of the pattern and the habit in which we speak. So if we accustom ourselves to thinking and saying kind words, so then it becomes a habit to speak in a kind way. And the more you build a habit, the easier it's going to be for you to stay in that space of a lashon tov, of speaking well. I heard something once about cursing. It's very interesting. My husband had been reading some Kabbalistic book, and he was talking about how when someone curses, what happens is it opens the window, chas v'shalom, it opens the window for the Satan to put a hook in your tongue, a spiritual hook. And so once he gets the hook in there, okay, she's writing it down. She takes good notes. You can get a Xerox copy of her notes.
Like a fish?
Hook, like a hook, yeah, literally like a hook, okay? That it gives him permission to put like a hook in the person's tongue. And once the hook...
Sorry, when somebody curses,
yes,
Satan,
it gives him a window of opportunity, like a quote-unquote permission, if you will, that he can kind of put a hook in the person's tongue. I wish I remember what the source was. I can ask my husband if you really want to know. And what that does is it gives him entree to enticing you to do it more often. So essentially, once you start with a curse word, God forbid, and he gets himself in there, right? He sees that opening. So then he's going to, in whatever way he can, encourage you in stressful moments, let's say, or in moments you're unhappy, to curse even more. And it literally, if you'll notice people, if you've ever heard people who curse when they speak, it's literally a habit. They don't even know that they're doing it. And so how do you get the hooks out? You have to catch yourself and just stop it dead in the tracks. It's like quitting cold turkey, right? It's just deciding I'm not going to talk like that. And if something slips out, you have to address it with yourself right away. No, I'm not going to do that. That was wrong. Hashem, please forgive me that I spoke like that. I'm not doing that anymore. And little by little, it's like you're taking the hooks out. But you have to have conscious endeavor in order to do it. Otherwise, we function in an unconscious way, and the speech patterns become habit. So the Ben Ish Chai in his book is talking about women should really work to build a habit of speaking with kindness, and the way let's see how he says, pay attention to the manner of speech, to speak politely, intelligently, and respectfully to everyone, including young children, simple-minded adults, and even servants. Servants meaning the people that help us in our lives. If you hire cleaning help, somebody puts gas in your car, somebody, whatever, fixes your tire, whatever, the people around you that help you in your daily life. He's saying that it's so important from a young age to model that behavior for your children and to practice that behavior with everyone around you. I when I speak with young women that are going on shidduch dates and they're sitting with a man in a restaurant, I tell them, pay attention to how he speaks to the wait staff. Pay attention to how he behaves with the person who's sitting you at the table. Pay attention to how he interacts, his energy, his attitude, his tone with the people around him who are helping him. because that will tell you more than anything that could come out of his mouth. That will tell you everything about him. Does he speak with gratitude, with compassion, with grace, with kindness? You know, or does he feel like it's owed to him? You should be serving me, and so forth. Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah, you said shidduch dating. I have a friend who I feel like her speech is the way that it is because of the inner voice. And I've been trying to help her for many, many years, and I would really love your input on that.
So when you say inner voice, tell me a little bit more what you mean by that.
So she speaks very aggressively, and I always tell her, I know that's not what you mean, but I've known you for so long that I know that someone who just met you, like a man that you're dating, is going to think that you're a lunatic. And she's like, yeah, I know, they always tell me I'm too aggressive. I'm like, okay, what did you tell yourself in that moment? And it's generally that exact thing. It's either more aggressive or equally aggressive. So I keep telling her that she needs to change the dialogue in her head in order to be able to speak better.
So the two things that come to mind, I mean, for those of you who don't know my background, so my primary background is both in education, but also I had 20 years as a clinically licensed psychotherapist in private practice. So the two things that come to mind are, number one, I would imagine that the behavior was at some point modeled for her.
Yes.
And number two, that there's probably a very deep-seated sense of insecurity. And that is masking, that aggressiveness is masking the insecurity and the ability to just kind of be okay with herself and within herself to be able to relax and tap into that more feminine energy and allow something to come to her as opposed to feeling having to be aggressive and get it. That's just the two things that come to the top of my mind. Because in general, when people behave in certain ways, a lot of it is masking insecurity, even insecurity that they're just not aware of. You know, they're not in touch with themselves enough to know. You know, and by the way, that modeling piece can't be ignored. What we see when we're young, what's imprinted upon us, a lot of times we have to work very hard to overcome that, to become aware of it and overcome it. You know, I always joke that, like, you know, you've officially become an adult when you say something and you turn around, look for your mother. You know what I'm saying? Like that you sound like your mother. Like, where did that come from? Where's my mom? You know, because we're imprinted on. That's what happens, and we have default settings. You know, and so those default settings are usually set to mimic and mirror the people that raised us, whomever they are.
So
you know,
this isn't an issue of speech. Do you think that she just needs to get more serious?
I mean, speech is the manifestation of the underlying problem. Right? If she wasn't speaking, if she was just sitting, she would still be who she is internally. You just wouldn't see it, which is exactly what the Chafetz Chaim and others are saying in the beginning, is that the gift of speech is that we're able to manifest ourselves and our presence within the world. We're able to share with the world who we are internally. What is our thought process? Who are we? What is our makeup? What is our personality? What do we care? What do we value? So forth. We find that out because we talk with people. You know, there's people that we vibe with right away. We have very similar values. You meet them. I was just in Israel recently, Baruch Hashem, and I was speaking with a 90-something-year-old mother of Rebbeim that we know that are all Roshei Yeshiva. And I told them, I want to meet your mother. I want to meet the woman who raised you. I want to see her and meet her. And I sat with her, and she was just the most delicious person. And when we stood up, she leaned over to me. There were a lot of people in the room. She stood up, she leaned over to me, she grabbed my hand. She said, you know, I've known you for 10 minutes, but I've known you for 50 years. And it was just such a special moment that I'll treasure, you know, forever. And that's an example of how people can connect through energy and through speech. And that comment was just such a beautiful, think about it, it's just a few words she said, but I'll take that with me forever, God willing. You know, so the things that we say, they have everlasting impact. You know, I'm quite certain we all remember things that we heard, you know, as a child, you know, the thought patterns and ideas, ideologies that our parents held or that our family members held. And they imprint on us. You know, we understand that. And then we grow up and we go through development, we become our own adults, and we begin to run all this pre-programmed, coding through the new things we're learning and the people that we're becoming, and we begin to create our own sense of identity in terms of saying, yeah, that I like, that resonates with me, I'll keep that. This I don't like, that doesn't resonate with me, and I'm not going to use that. I'm going to leave that to my parents, I'm going to leave that to my grandma, whoever gave it to you. And that's how you become your own person. You get to an age, it's usually late teens and up, where we begin to start really evaluating who we are and what we like and don't like, and we no longer need to kind of follow the patterning of what was given to us. Just as a little bit of a sidetrack comment, but I realized very recently, like in the last year or two, what does the idea of yichus really mean? Are you familiar with the concept of yichus? The idea that a family has a certain kind of lineage or background through the generations. Usually it's tied to, let's say, great rebbeim. You say, oh, this person has yichus, right? It means they're really coming from a very great family, And when you look at families like Rav Eliashiv, who Zatzal, we just had his yahrzeit, I think it was yesterday, that his daughter married Rav Chaim Kanievsky, right? Who comes from the Steipler, who was Gedol Ador. These are Gedolim. These are families with yichus, and I never understood. Well, is that fair that they should, It's fair. It's more than fair, because it's really coming down to what were these people exposed to from the moment of their first breath? Holiness, pure holiness. We should only be all zoche to be surrounded by holy, holy people that imprint holy things upon us, and that's the pure form of the idea of yichus, is the idea that your exposure from the start, from the seed level of your life, is holiness. That's really what it means with yichus, and so you think to yourself, I'm a balas tshuva, I didn't grow up from family, so what does it mean for me? I don't necessarily come from yichus. I come from great people, but not yichus in that sense, And I realized, what? If it has to, it starts with you. So you start the yichus. God willing, you're given multiple generations, and look back and say, you want to look down the generations and say, I helped to create that holiness. I helped to create that lineage that, God willing, few generations from now, Mashiach will be here and we'll all be living in Yerushalayim and everything will be at peace. But that our children and grandchildren will be able to look back and say, oh, that's my yichus. It started with my bubby or my safta or my grandma or whatever we call her. So if you didn't have it, it's not an excuse. Because you have right now this moment to decide, okay, the yichus will start with me. Make sense? And the place to start it with, your speech. Your speech, which leads to your actions, and so on and so forth. So we see that the power of speech is tremendous and can provide us literally, not just for now, but literally for generations from now. Because with our speech, we will imprint and create the next generations. Okay? All right, how are we doing on time? Okay. All right, so that's the Chafetz Chaim. I have another Chafetz Chaim here that's amazing. Okay, it says here, this is talking about the pure power of speech. God bless you. Okay? But then the Torah tells us Hashem brings this creature to life. Creature meaning man. And Hashem blew the soul of life into his nostrils, and man became a living being. This is obviously straight out of Breshit. What exactly was the breath with which Hashem gave life to Adam, and through him all of mankind? Onkelos explains that it was the Ruach Mimala, a speaking spirit. The life force in man is his ability to speak. This is what made him the crowning achievement, With this gift, he would be able to communicate with the master of the world. He would be able to express his innermost thoughts and emotions. He would have tools for learning Hashem's Torah. Just as Hashem created his world with the power of speech, the 10 utterances that we discussed, man continues to create his world each and every day with every word he speaks. The power of speech imbues us with godliness of our own. So by speaking, we're literally manifesting the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's basically what we're doing. The Zohar, in describing the breath of life that Hashem blew into Adam, states, one who blows from within himself. This means that in the act of bringing man to life, Hashem breathed a part of himself into man. It is precisely our ability to speak that identifies us as godly, spiritual creations. So we understand, really, I think if you had any questions up until this point, we really can put to rest the idea that speech is literally what we are manifesting the presence of Hashem in this world. That we are co-creating with him existence, that we are co-creating with him our experience, we are co-creating with him impact of the people around us, and it's that power of speech that delineates us from every other aspect of creation. And it is quite possibly the greatest gift that Hashem bestowed upon us. So we understand that when we walk around with this mouth, that we are literally walking around with a weapon that can be used for good or, God forbid, for worse. And we have to become so incredibly mindful of the power that we wield and what we choose to do with it. Okay? Now, I want to just touch on, there's 3 things, and I'll do them kind of quickly, okay? Because I know I'm taking up a lot of time. So we have the external speech, which is really everything that we've just been discussing. It's the expression of ourselves into the world through the power of speech. Okay, that's really what we've been talking about up until this time. But there's 2 other things I want to touch on. The second thing I want to touch on is the idea of internal speech. What is internal speech? Thoughts, right? Our thoughts. Internal speech is really the conversations we are having with ourselves. The conversations we are having with ourselves. So even though we're not manifesting an outward sound, it is still a form of speech. And remember, Hashem knows and sees all. He doesn't just hear what we say. He knows what we think. He knows what's in our hearts. He knows what we feel. He knows everything. So this internal dialogue that we have with ourselves is equally as important as this dialogue that we have with the world externally. Now, the internal speech is where the Yetzer Hara tends to get involved the most. And we have to be aware of that, right? The Yetzer Hara likes to get in there. He likes to get in our ear and say things, and then we start believing what he's telling us, and he likes to try to shift our internal dialogue. So when we have thoughts of questioning our value, when we have thoughts of questioning our ability, when we have thoughts of questioning our worth and our ability to create a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to understand that that's 100% the Yetzer Hara. Because we are pure souls, holy souls, made from Hashem direct, walking around with his essence within us that is animating these bodies that we all carry around with us. Right? So we are a spiritual being having a physical experience. We are not a physical being. We are a spiritual being having a physical experience. The body is the mechanism that carries our neshama around and allows us to convey and act with mitzvot in this world and live a Torah life as of service to Hashem. So the inner workings of our mind are equally as important. And when we begin to need to make changes and need to create space between what we think and speech and need to be able to build our self-confidence and need to be able to understand our worth and our value and need to be able to produce in this world according to the curriculum that Hashem created for each and every one of us, because we were each born with a unique curriculum. A unique experience that we're supposed to manifest here. Things we have to learn specifically. Maybe corrections, tikkunim we need to make. People we need to marry. Children we need to bring into the world. Work we need to do. Things we need to write. Songs we need to sing. Davening we need to do. Right? All of that is stemming from here. Everything starts here. Everything starts with a thought. If you don't have the thought, it will never manifest. I actually give an entire shiur about that. It's on my YouTube. It's the very, I think Gabi was the first class for Bakol Mikol Kol. I have a series, I think it was the first one that's talking about the idea of thought.
Yeah, it is.
The first one, yeah? And it's literally an hour and a half on the concept of thought. And if you want to go into the text, you can go into Chovos HaLevavos. Chovos HaLevavos is an entire book that's teaching you how to think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how to do mitzvot with your mind. You don't need your hands, your feet, your body. You can do mitzvot just with your mind. So this internal speech that we have is so important, and it's really where you need to begin if you want to improve and make tshuva on your external speech. Because you can't do those things without the internal process. So that mental thinking, that's where you begin. You begin to really review your thoughts and say, is that accurate? Is that true? Is it emes? Is what I'm thinking emes? Am I really not capable? Am I really not valuable? Am I going to believe what other people are saying about me? Or do I need to be who I am? And from there, that's how I work in the world. Okay?
Can you give me an example of what you just said about the mitzvah with the thought?
When you think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a mitzvah. When you think about His Shechina and wanting Beis HaMikdash and wanting Mashiach to come, it's a mitzvah. Literally, that simple. Mitzvah. Drive in the car, think about the Shechina. I miss you. I want you here. I want my home to be your home. You're welcome in my home anytime. I'm going to create the environment for you. I'm going to make myself holy so that you can come and be around me. I know the Beis HaMikdash isn't here, but my home is your home. I want you with me. Ride with me next to me in the car. Let's talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu together. Mitzvah. All with your mind. It's amazing. It's really miraculous. The system that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created for us and the ways and the paths that He has set forth for us to succeed in connecting with Him and making the most of our time here on this planet, it's miraculous what He's done for us. But it's up to us to choose to connect with it. We could not have this system without free will. Hashem could not have this system without free will. Free will is what allows us to seek Him out and find Him. It had to be a choice, because otherwise all it is it's like teaching your dog, you say, give me paw, he knows he's going to get fed. It's like training, Pavlov's dogs, right? No, Hashem couldn't have it that way. We had to have the choice whether to connect with Him or not. So that choice, all of that interaction with Him, that choosing to serve Him and be the most that we can be for Him in this world, according to His Torah, is through internal thought and choice. Exercising our free will in the direction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Does that make sense? You're all with me still? Excellent. Okay. This last one is a doozy, so buckle up. The most ironic and interesting aspect of speech, and possibly the most powerful element to speech, is actually silence.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. One of the most powerful aspects of speech, of the gift of speech and the power of speech, is actually silence. And it's written about in multiple places, multiple sources, and it's one of the most powerful aspects of speech and speaking, is the choice to remain silent. Rav Avigdor Miller says very clearly, silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is actively produced. Silence is a production in and of itself. your choice to refrain from speech, especially in certain pivotal moments, is a choice. It is a production, something you produce. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Pretty powerful, right? Pretty incredible. Let me bring you some sources to kind of back it up. Not that I don't think you believe me, but I always feel there are people that say it much better than me, right? So this is straight out of Pirkei Avos. And excuse my Hebrew, okay? Shimon beno omer, kol yamai gadalti ben hachamim, velo matzati laguf tov mishtika. Shimon, his son, said, all my days I grew up among the sages and did not find anything better for one's person than silence. Okay? Velo hamidrash hu ha'ikar ele ha'maseh, v'chol ha'marbe dvarim mevi chet. Study is not the essential thing. Deed is. And whoever engages in excessive talk brings upon him sin. So this is straight out of Pirkei Avos. Someone saying they grew up in the presence of Chachamim and never saw anything more powerful than shtika, silence. Okay? Exactly.
Can you,
So-
can you repeat that last one, please?
Yes. The last. So first of all, this is Pirkei Avos 16 in chapter 2, so that you know where to find it. Okay? And it talks about here, it says, silence is a fence for wisdom. Silence is a fence for wisdom. Make sense? Okay, so that's Pirkei Avos. This is Orchos Yosher from Rav Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal. It's really, I'm going to run through a few of these because it's just too much. Okay. He has, this is Orchos Yosher, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, chapter 28. The title of the chapter is Silence. He did a whole chapter on it. Our sages praised the attribute of silence and said of it, and he's like bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, more and more and more. So I'll just read a few of them, okay? The protective fence for wisdom is silence. This is in Avos. We just read that. If you would buy a word for one sela, silence for two, meaning silence is more valuable than a word. That's from Megillah 18:8. The choicest medicine is silence. I'm reading bullet points now. The silence of the residents of Bavel proves their pure genealogy from Kedushin. Meaning they had the wisdom to be silent. It shows the holiness of the people that were living in Bavel. The Gemara teaches silence is fitting for wise men and certainly for fools, as it says in Mishlei, even a fool will be considered wise if he is silent. Right? So what is the difference between a chacham and a fool? If the fool is silent, especially good, he should be silent because he's going to reveal the fact that he's foolish. If a chacham is silent, it means he's revealing his wisdom. Because he understands when to speak, when not to speak. Okay? Let me see. In Tehillim it is written, is there indeed silence when you should be speaking righteousness? The Gemara interprets the word huamnan elim, is there indeed silence, as follows. What should a person's umanus be, profession, in this world? He should act as if he were in Hebrew, I don't know the word, ilium, mute. What's the word in Hebrew, anybody know? Ilim, a mute. Meaning a person's profession should literally be to be producing silence. That's the best way to walk in the world. Speak when you have to speak. Speak with kindness. Speak from a place of good intention. Speak with the intention of building those around you. Speak with integrity for yourself and for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Speak in a way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to tell you in 120 years when you're standing in front of the Beis Din Shel Ma'ala, I'm proud of you, I loved what you had to say, and you were quiet often. I loved your silence. Right? And silence, believe it or not, is a huge part of the concept of to mevater. Right? What does it mean to mevater? How do you define in English mevater?
To let go.
To let go, right? When you mevater, when you're in an argument with someone, a confrontation, you say, you know what? Okay, I'm mevater. I step back, you win, it's fine. I'm okay, we're good. When you mevater, it's so powerful. And that's rooted in silence. That's rooted in deciding that what you have to say and what you have to do is not as important as peace. To be like Aaron HaKohen, Rodef Shalom, someone who is chasing peace. You cannot chase peace with lots of words and aggression. You can chase peace with silence and a loving heart. Make sense? Yes?
I heard a lot of stories when somebody said something nice to somebody. And
Can you talk a little louder?
I heard many stories that when somebody said, like, hurt somebody's feelings, said something to them, and they didn't respond and they didn't say anything, and then people went to that person to ask for brachot.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Because in that moment, it's so powerful. I just talked about this last night. That if you witness someone who mevater is in a situation, let's say for whatever reason something happens and they're very humiliated or very embarrassed, and they're quiet and they mevater and they don't respond, they don't engage, literally run to that person and ask for a bracha in that moment. Because there, like you said, there are stories. I heard one story of a man who, him and his wife couldn't have children. They didn't have children for many years. Yeah. And he witnessed something. I think it happened in the shul or the community or whatever. And he ran over and said, "Please bless me to have a child, please." And then within the year, they had a baby.
I have goosebumps.
Yeah, me too. I also have. It's incredible. It's incredible. Here's the last thing I'll read about silence. Forcing wisdom down our throats is counterproductive. The base drives, when he says the base drives, it means that human nature, the aspect in human nature that wants and desires, the base drives will push back at any attempt to subjugate them with the intellect. Okay? Our body likes to be in charge. Our base drives want to be in charge. That's the animalistic nature of the human being. We have needs, we want those needs met. Right? The surest medium for wisdom of our minds to infiltrate that animalism of our bodies is absolute silence. It's when we are quiet in our minds, in our bodies, in our mouths, in our hearts, that things can begin to percolate and simmer and integrate and fall in. And when that happens, you're able to start practicing putting them into motion. If we're so busy all the time with our bodies and our mouths and our thoughts and our stuff, it's very hard to grow. It's very hard. So what he's saying is the only way to really kind of trick that animalistic nature that we have and our ego that is so powerful and rejects anything that wants to help us grow is to just be in quiet. Before bed for a few minutes, in the morning for a few minutes, in your car for a few minutes. Try to find quiet, find silence. And the last thing I'll say, because I'm sure I've gone over my allotted time, is to say that all of this is rooted in one very special concept, which is Yiras Shamayim. It is virtually impossible to accomplish any of this without an understanding of who is in charge, and that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you walk through the world gently with kind words and a kind heart and Yiras Shamayim, you are a force to be reckoned with in the best possible kind of way. And nothing can stop you. Because you will be fully in your power in which God intended you to be, which is to be the woman that you are, with the gifts that you have been given, the unique things you have to produce here, the family that you have to leave, the friends the friend that you are to other people, the community member that you are to other people. When you begin to act from a space of understanding your power and have Yiras Shamayim to know that your power is for no other purpose than to serve Him, and to bring your own focus and energy and His essence out into the world as a channel, this is the best possible space from which to operate. And it's going to elevate you and expedite your process in the greatest possible way. So that's what I have for you today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I think there's someone waiting in the wings. I'm not sure. But thank you so much for your attention. Yes?
This class today,
Thank you. I have a YouTube, and I'll put the audio up on the YouTube. So you can just search for me, Dr. Mia Ozer. You can search on YouTube, Dr. Mia Ozer. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hatzlacha, hatzlacha.